A number of people have asked about watercolor. You notice most of our quick tips are done with oils, and that's because oils don't require a drying time. And so when I'm showing you a principle, it's easier to show it in oils than any of the other media. Watercolor does require a lot of drying time, but we've had lots of requests about watercolor, and one of those has to do with my palette. What kind of palette do I use for watercolor? My watercolor palette is set up very much like my oil palette is, according to the color wheel. So talk about color first. I'll just go through the colors. Now, watercolor, like oil, depends on the actual color that comes out of the tube. A lot of times will depend upon the brand of the tube. So what I'll do here is I'll point out the color that's on my palette, how I arrange the palette according to the color wheel, and I'll just also talk about the colors that or the brand of the color I'm using. So the palette begins right here in the way I work in it. This is the way my palette is arranged. I always have it like this, and so I have learned where things are and how to reach for them. So right here begins with yellow green. Now right here, yellow green on the color wheel. The yellow green I use is the Daniel Smith sap green, because I find that all of the brands of sap green don't cut it. Daniel Smith sap green is light fast, which is one of my requirements for all the watercolor that goes on my palette. It's transparent. That's another requirement I have for all the colors that go on my palette, except the cadmium colors. But I have most of the colors on my palette are the transparent. Light, fast, and transparent, and the ability to go dark. So this has all three. It's light, fast, and I love the color of the sap green that comes out of here. I usually will never have this color by itself. It's always mixed with something else, as are all my colors. So that's the first one. The second color here is a blue green, and that is the Holbein Viridian Hue. Now, I don't care what anybody says about hue versus tint versus pure pigment, whatever. This is light fast, this is dark and transparent, and it gives me wonderful mixtures of greens, and also serves to be a nice neutralizer for some of the warmer colors. So that's the Holbein Sap Green. My other favorite that's on my palette is the Winsor & Newton Antwerp Blue. That's a blue-green, and you see it right here. So I'm going sort of in this direction. A blue-green belongs right here. The yellow-green belongs right here. So I'm moving in that direction on the color wheel as I move around. And I say Winsor & Newton Antwerp has the same characteristics. Next is the ultramarine blue. And now you notice I'm skipping. I have two colors on my palette. You see I have them marked right here. These are two colors that I'm getting ready to not put on my palette at all. When I find that I'm using less and less of a color on my palette, eventually I won't be using it anymore, and I'll take it off. But I keep it here just in case I want to reach for it on rare occasions. But when I find I can mix the color from some other combination, it usually ends up going. So this is the cerulean blue, and this is cobalt blue. They will go away eventually. Here's the ultramarine blue, and my favorite is the Holbein Ultramarine Deep. So that is blue right here that leans towards blue violet. So I have a blue that leans towards green, and I have a blue that leans towards violet. As I come around the palette, the next color is Carbazole Violet, and there again I'm going to Daniel Smith. I really do love the Daniel Smith colors. I find watercolors especially. I find that they meet all my requirements, especially the light fast requirements, and they're always nice and transparent and rich and deep. And the next color is another one I'm about to ditch, and that is a manganese violet. I don't really need that. It's a very weak color, and I can get the hue by mixing this and this. I don't really need it. It's going to go very, very soon. One that I absolutely love is quinacridone violet, and there again, This is the Daniel Smith, and that is a red violet. You see as it moves right around the color wheel, the red violet. The next one is carmine. Now this 2 is the Daniel Smith color. Carmine is continuing towards red. It leans a little bit towards red violet, which is fine because it has that nice pinky quality that when mixed just with water, I often need for flowers and things like that. So this is the carmine, Daniel Smith carmine. The next one is another one that I don't need anymore. This is the cadmium red, and I find I do not reach for that color anymore. And so you see I have it marked here as to go. But the one I do use an awful lot, which I depend upon, is cadmium scarlet. Now oddly, I really love American Journey's cadmium scarlet. That's the red orange. It's a red that leans towards orange. So the red orange is made by the Cheap Joe company is called American Journey. Now you notice as I move around, I haven't named any earth colors yet. I haven't named any desaturated colors. All these are the most highly saturated versions that I can find of those particular hues on the color wheel. The only desaturated, well, with another exception, but it's about to go too. The only really desaturated version on my palette is Quinacridone Burnt Orange by Daniel Smith. And that's because it gives me that nice, rich, red orange that burnt sienna used to give me, but burnt sienna is not transparent enough, so I ditched burnt sienna. It also is a good neutralizer for any of the blues or greens. So that's that one. Now, I come over here to 2 oranges. I have one of these is just plain cadmium orange, and that particular cadmium orange is probably going to go too because I'm not real sure I need it. This is cadmium orange. I don't have the brand. This too was a Holbein, I believe, cadmium orange. The cadmium yellow orange I do keep reaching for. And so this is the Holbein cadmium yellow orange, but I also find that the Winsor Newton yellow orange, or cadmium yellow deep, I believe it's called, is just about the same, but I think I like the Holbein better. And it is not a transparent color, but it's difficult to find yellow oranges and yellows and whatever, except for those that are slightly desaturated, difficult to find them in transparent colors. But usually on the light colors, we don't really need that transparency anyway. So that's the Holbein cadmium yellow orange. This one is about to go. This is the new Gamboge. I find I don't reach for it anymore. The reason I had it on the palette to begin with, it does have that slight transparency, but it does have that tendency to fade that I really don't like. So I'm reaching for it less and less, and it's going to go. Now I have 2 yellows here. It's not important to have 2 yellows, but I know some people say you need a warm and a cool of each color. Well, I don't buy that, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But this one is the cadmium yellow, and the Winsor Newton cadmium yellow is just hard to beat. So that's what this is. The other one is the Winsor yellow. And you'll notice it's slightly cooler. This is a little bit more orange, and this is a little bit more on the yellow registration. The Winsor Newton Winsor yellow. So those 2 probably are going to stay. I'm still contemplating whether the cadmium yellow is necessary. Depends on how many times I reach into it. Now here's one that's really out of place as far as the color wheel goes because it's more of a yellow orange. But I have it here because in very light washes, meaning with lots of water and less color, it does seem to have that yellow quality to it. It really belongs in the range of things. It belongs about right in here. But that is the Quinacridone Deep Gold. Also, I'm leaving it here just to see how many times am I going to need it. How many times am I able to get that transparency and that color by mixing other colors. So my test for whether a color stays or goes is whether I'm able to get that color. Now, by mixing. Now I want to point out one thing to you here, why I don't have yellow ochre, I don't have yellow ochre on my palette. I don't have burnt sienna on my palette. I don't have burnt umber on my palette. I don't have any of those colors on my palette. And why not? Well, I'll show you why not. If I want yellow ochre in watercolor, if I want yellow ochre, I can come into one of the yellows. This is the cadmium yellow, made by Winsor Newton. I said there it is right there. Now, if I want yellow ochre, where's my color wheel? Okay, let's just put the color wheel right here. If I want yellow ochre, I can look at the color wheel and let it tell me what I need. Well, the color wheel says if you want yellow ochre, you really ought to be using yellow orange. So I could have started out with yellow orange, but let's just do a little experiment here. I could have started with yellow orange right here. And then what would I add to yellow orange or yellow, or would I think it also depends upon the yellow ochre you buy as to what color comes out of the tube. I can go to the complement on the color wheel and turn that into yellow ochre. So the complement on the color wheel is violet. Now here is my carbazole violet. Let's do one other thing, and that is the complement of yellow is violet. The complement of yellow orange is blue violet. So let's also put some ultramarine blue down. Now I got those opposite each other, but that's okay. Now let's just see. I can pull a little bit of the carbazole violet into yellow orange. Maybe add a little yellow into it, and right there I have yellow ochre. And here it is right here. If I want that yellow ochre to lean a little bit more towards yellow, I can add a little bit more yellow into it. If I want it to lean a little bit more towards orange, I can add a little bit more orange into it. If I want it to lean a little bit more towards green, which yellow ochres sometimes do, depending upon the yellow ochre you get, I can add just a little bit of the blue into it and lean it a little bit more towards green. So a little bit more. There we go. So that what I have right here is about the range of yellow ochres that you would find. Okay, the one other thing I wanted to explain, by the way, I have here all the potential I need. I have potential for mixing burnt sienna. I have the potential for mixing burnt umber. I have potential for mixing all the earth colors. So I don't have them on the palette because when I need them, I simply mix them. I wanted to explain the business of warm yellow, cool yellow, which I said I didn't buy, that need to have both warm yellow and cool yellow on the palette. So here's the cadmium yellow. And here is the Winsor yellow. Now you see when I put them on the palette how there is a bit of a difference in their temperature. This one's warmer, this one's cooler. Now if I want a warmer, this being a cooler yellow, even if I wanted that yellow to be just a tiny bit cooler than it actually is, I could go over to my sap green. Not much, don't need much. Go over my sap green and I could cool it and make it just as cool as I want it with the sap green. Ultramarine blue would cool and thaw it, so that's the reason I reach for the sap green. Same as if I wanted the yellow warmer. Well, let's do that part. Let's pull that Winsor Winsor yellow out again right here. If I want that warmer, I can reach into either the cadmium orange or a cadmium red light. I can make it warm right in here with any of these. So let's reach into the cadmium yellow orange. Cadmium yellow orange, cadmium orange, they are so close that either one of those will work. Not much, don't need that much. So I'll put a little bit more water in it, and here we go. Now you can see by putting the cadmium orange, yellow orange into the Windsor Yellow, I can get it the same temperature as this, as the cadmium yellow. So you can see that my watercolor palette has a logic to it, just like the oil painting palette does. And so you can see also that because of all my requirements, this is the palette I've come up with so far. That's about 50 years of evolving of a watercolor palette. But you know what? It's not finished evolving. It will continue to evolve for as long as I paint. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.